Recording. All right, Mark.
Yes.
Welcome to the new project.
Thank you. My story. We started with childhood, didn't we? So I had the most normal upbringing you could possibly have in terms of my parents. My mum and dad have been married be close to 50 years now. As a kid, my old man worked a fair bit. Never really had he worked BHP like most people in Newcastle. I don't know if you know much about BHP, but it was the steelworks in town, and Kooragang, I think it was. And that shut down mid-90s, and that was everyone's source of income. So old man's sort of not left without a job, but everyone's laid off and you've got to go find something else. I was pretty young when it all happened, so I don't remember a great deal about it. I just remember how big it was when BHP shut down. From then on, he worked a few jobs here and there, ended up working for an Indigenous organisation, my old boys' Koori. So I think he spent 17 years there. At any given time, he'd work 3 jobs if he had to sort of get by, because for the most part, mum was a stay-at-home mum while young. And then as we got, I think it was just before we were teenagers, she started working full-time again. We were old enough to sort of take care of ourselves, so didn't really need mum around the house all the time. So she started working full-time again, and then no real standout trauma from my childhood, apart from being, which at the time I didn't realise, I was kind of, I don't care what people think about me kind of person, because that's what my parents raised me to be. But I was also the fat kid all through primary school. And as most fat kids are, you're the point of fun. You just, yeah. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. It was just kids being kids, until you sort of do, as you get older, you're sort of reflecting back on certain things and what behaviour led to what next. And so just your standard, I guess in the 90s, it's probably more normalised these days for kids to be overweight, but in the 90s it wasn't heaps common. And for the most part, I wasn't always the biggest kid, so I always sort of, well, you might call me fat, but there's always someone bigger. So there was a sort of a little bit of a deflection there, I suppose. But I played a lot of sport, so I thought I'm fit. I'm just bigger than the other kids. But I was a swimmer, so it stands out quite obvious when you're the swimmer that's the fat kid. Yeah. You're standing there, you're there in your budgies, but so it's pretty obvious. At the time, like I said, I just shrugged it off. I didn't care. Okay. But it's not until you start getting older and the way your clothes fit, you're like, oh, I can't wear that. That makes me look too fat. I need to wear a tighter shirt, so it's going to hide everything. Or for a long time, I didn't wear high top shoes because I've got quite big legs and always had quite big legs, and I'm like, wouldn't now just look, it's like my legs straight up and down. So I always shied away from certain things, or there might have been certain sports that I would, even though being a swimmer, there's certain things I'd still shy away from because I was the bigger kid. But
About teenage years.
So I hit puberty fucking so young. So when I hit puberty, I probably haven't grown since I was maybe 13 or 14. So I was massive for a teenager.
Yeah.
Filled out a bit, like I was still holding more weight than most kids, but like I was huge compared to most kids, yeah. Like I had a full face beard at 13, 14 and
Wow.
yeah.
What high school? Where are we?
Cardiff High, represent. Yeah, look, and anyone that's grown up in Newcastle or wherever, like you always bag the next suburb over and go, oh, that's the rough school. But yeah, Cardiff was sort of known for like a semi-rough school. But when you get to your teenage years, especially when I was a teenager, like drinking was really normalised. So
A lot of parties?
yeah, big time. And I think the first time I walked into a bottle-o and didn't get asked for ID, I was 14. So from then on, I'm like, well, if that's going to work every time, I don't need to get my older sister to buy me alcohol. So just tell mum you're staying at one of the boys' house, and next thing you know, you're going to party and that was, for the most part, like most weekends throughout my teenage years. I was quite good at footy, prioritised drinking over footy because, drinking, footy culture sort of leads into drinking anyway.
Drink hard.
Yeah, like I probably could have taken a different path if I prioritised footy, but the social aspect of drinking and being social, because looking back now, because I wasn't the cool kid in primary school and I was the fat kid or the bullied kid, or I found a sense of self-worth in being the drunkest guy at the party, or because if you are, you're funny. Like everyone's like, well, have a go at Wardy's. Look at the state of him, like, and you.
And it was all a cover up.
100%. And you don't realise it until you do some like introspective work. But yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't fun. Like everyone has fun when they're on the piss, but yeah, you sort of take it to that next level where you're always the drunk guy. So that sort of led into me not doing great at school when I had the intelligence to do so, and I was like, oh, I'm just going to leave and get an apprenticeship as everyone does at 15 or so, whenever it was. And a lot of my friends did. For me, it didn't work out that way, and I bounced around like a couple of shitty jobs because I was just partying all the time. Didn't prioritise anything other than, as long as I could make enough money to still live a normal life. And
what, are we still living with mum, or did we
Yeah. Okay. No, I lived with the oldies till I was about 26, and they were none the wiser. Yeah, they were none the wiser. I was like, as most kids do at that age, they're probably going out drinking most weekends. So they just thought I was out drinking most weekends, but for the most part, I think I was 16 when I first had a pill, and that was so we made the decision at my house to get him, and we had a party at one of our mates' house. He was 6 or 7 years older than us, and we all made the decision. A few boys had tried it before, and they're like, oh fuck yeah, let's get on it. As you do. We went and got.
It's exciting.
Yeah. And like it was, when I had it, I was like, the rush of serotonin when you have your first pill, I was like, the fuck have I been doing my whole life? Yeah, so safe to say I enjoyed myself. And that sort of continued for the better part of 3 or 4 years. So I guess you can understand the extent of the partying that we were doing. And
parties.
yeah,
Great parties.
yeah, and look, me and a few other friends we'd do selling a bit here and there. Like I had some mates that were doing like a fair bit for him, but I sort of never wanted to get too involved in that because I didn't trust myself having access to that much.
Why? Because using, or
Yeah.
you didn't want?
Yeah, I'd be. Oh, I mean, look.
Or you just didn't like the crowd that come around as a supplier, or?
And living with my parents. I'm not gonna bring that shit around my house. Yeah. So.
Jeez, that would have been hard for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So he went to prison, and Newcastle dried up, absolutely dried up, because that was the level of, yeah. So everyone started taking gas, and then everyone started talking about smokable gas, and like when you learn more about things like meth is meth. One's just more pure than the other, but a few of my mates started doing that, and I was always like, "You look like fucking junkies." I'm like, "You will never catch me doing that." So fast forward, I don't know, 12 months. Rubber arm, call it what you will. I was like, look, I mean, it's not going to try once. And for the most part, it didn't. And
it does.
yeah,
Sometimes it does, but
yeah,
I'm the same
and
too.
I was always I never considered myself as being any kind of addict because I had a full-time job. Always had a full-time job. Party always ended Sunday night. Like sometimes I'd kick on to a Monday and call in sick. Very, very rare because my parents drilled into me the importance of work. So I very, very rarely let it impact my work. Always went to work Monday to Friday. Sometimes go out on a Wednesday or Thursday night here and there. Always went to work the next day. So I never let it impact my life. So when you see it that way, you're like, well, I'm not addicted to anything because I'm only doing it on a weekend. So that one thing led to another, and smokable gas soon turns to ice. And again, justifying it in the fact that I'm only doing it over a weekend. Probably spent maybe the better part of, I don't know, 12 or 18 months. Most weekends. Still trained every day, or every day that I wasn't getting on it. So I was still training 5 days a week, it's like 6 days a week sometimes. I wasn't going out absolutely every weekend, but look, it consumed a pretty big part of my life. And then I guess the deeper you get, the shadier the people get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Always kept it away from my house.
Yeah.
It was never around my family or anything like that. And it was normalised at some of the, not with anyone's parents, but like some of the boys' houses, some didn't live with their parents and things like that. Normalised there. Everyone had a party house. So yeah, things got. I ended up in a. I'll keep the details on this one pretty light too, but I ended up held at gunpoint. Me and a few other people, and they were after drugs and money, whatever they could get from us. Long story short, we ended up okay. And I ended up with like symptomatic PTSD from that. So I was quite paranoid, especially of a weekend. I was like, if someone's going to break into my house, it's going to be of a weekend because that's when it happened. And now I see all like the youth crime on TV. Everything happens through the week because police are less alert. There's less people. Yeah. But regardless of the fact, I was always paranoid of a weekend. So the less I slept of a weekend, the less likely I was going to be unprepared for something like that to happen again. Yeah. So that led to, it was one Chrissy holidays, and a mate had got some good shit, and I think I was awake for 5 days. Went home to sleep it off. Yeah, I went home to sleep it off. For the life of me, couldn't sleep, and started hearing, seeing things. I thought someone was breaking into my parents' house. I could hear them crawling underneath the house, which once I worked out this was a psychotic episode, it was my pulse on the pillow. And I can hear him crawling underneath my house. I can vividly remember like lights in the backyard flashing in through my window, and I heard one of my mates' phones ring in the backyard. I'm like, oh, they're just having me on. And I even texted him, and then the next day I went back in there like I'd had fuck all sleep, and then on the way in there like I kept seeing like this. I thought it was a undercover police vehicle. It was because I kept seeing a silver Ford Territory. I don't know if you know how fucking common silver Ford Territories are, but driving back into my mate's place, I seen so many of them, and I thought it was the same car every time. And if they couldn't have got to where they would have been each time, but I got in there, and then we were all sitting around out the front. I was explaining what had happened. They're like, look, you're just wigging out. You just need more sleep. And I'm like, yeah, that's a fair assessment. And then he lived near an industrial area, and I could hear like all this tapping around the streets. And I'm like, he's going to get raided. And these tapping noise are the police communicating in like a way of communicating of like what's going on. And then I seen this flashing red light. I'm like, it's happening now. And I went inside, and turns out it was a fucking car immobiliser flashing in the window across the road. And I'm like, the boys were like, you need to go to bed. So I went to bed, slept it all off, woke up the next morning, and I'm like, I fucking never want to feel like that again. And that was it. Done. Yeah. So I was like,
that's it. No.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I need to get away from this shit.
So what are we doing now?
Timing couldn't have been better. I had, I think 4 or 5 of the boys moved to Melbourne not long after. Same reason. Like a few of us were in a rut, but we needed to get out of the lifestyle that we were in. So I had a partner at the time, and I focused on my fitness. Relationship was always there. Like she was quite a understanding person, and like didn't come out with me or anything like that when she was not the most social person. So I guess that worked in my favour.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And then I focused on fitness. I'm like, I need to get my life back on track. Like I'd always loved the gym, and like I said, even throughout this time, I was still training. So I'm like, this is what I need to do to get away from it. I need to focus on these things that are going to be positive in my life, and stopped doing drugs. Quit smoking for, I think at the time it was about 2 years. Stopped going out all the time, stopped partying. I'd have a drink here or there, but my partner at the time, like not long before that, I'd gone through a pretty toxic breakup. And I did some internal work at the time where I was sort of like, that's where the fitness really started sort of really started helping me. But at the same time, I was still getting on it all the time. Focused on myself, started reading quite a bit. That's where I sort of looked introspectively and realised that maybe she wasn't the only problem in the relationship, that I was a bit of a fuck up and my drug use probably didn't help the situation at all. So, so that's when that all started. And then fast forward about 6 months is when I'm like, I'm done, I need to get away from it. So the purpose was just to get away from drugs. Yep. So I lent on fitness, which had been a bit of an emotional crutch as well. So yeah, I was probably...
Do you think it saved you in a way, fitness? You know, even though it was always there, now you could almost use it to a way to keep the mind clear, keep the addiction away, distraction maybe?
Not so much, because I was sort of like, at that point I was sort of like, I'm fucking done. Like it was that bad for me that I'm like, I never want to touch it again. So fitness was just something that had always sort of been there, that I was like, I can lean into this a lot harder and really focus on improving my mental health, my physical health. Like, that's why I'd been smoking for, at the time, like 6 or 8 years, and look, it didn't stay away from forever because...
How crazy is that for you to be smoking huge amounts for that long and just can't... Yeah, it was like, I was just like, I'm done. Like, it's just, there was... look, I only quit smoking for 2 years, and I wouldn't say I started partying every weekend again, but I definitely partied again from then. It just wasn't the same style of, or as toxic behaviour as what I was doing before. So, but yeah, I started smoking again and smoked again for another 6 to 8 years. Like I've only been cigarette free for about 3 years. So good.
Yeah, but even again, what led to that was I had a big New Year's, and I smoked so many cigarettes that when, I don't know if you've ever been a smoker, but when someone puts a cigarette out in a drink, especially in a can, and you can't see it, and you drink it.
Oh, there's nothing worse. I've did that before.
I didn't even do that. Like, I smoked that many darts that I could taste that on my lungs for like 3 days after, and I'm like, I'm never having a cigarette again. Yeah. And I went for, I think, 6 months without one, had one, and I'm like, that was fucked. I'm never smoking again. After all this, I sort of, I started working in mental health. And
perfect.
I started really, because when I got away from it, I was sort of like, I could gravitate towards being some kind of drug or alcohol counsellor, and then when I got into mental health, I'm like, this is my purpose. Like, yeah, like I can empathise with these people. A lot of them can relate to my story, and for the most part, people say don't share your story, and for the most part, you're pretty scarce on details. But if someone can relate to what you tell them, and they're like, okay, well, this is all I need to do to get out of that situation, it goes a long way. But I started to find that most people were, especially adults, or like mature adults, or mature aged adults, too far gone too far gone, and I wasn't having quite the impact that I thought I would. Yeah. So about, I think it was nearly 2 years ago now, I started working in child protection just as a second income because we were having a baby and I didn't want my missus to go back to work. So I started doing that as sort of like a second income, and I found that I could have more of an impact with teenagers.
Okay.
So especially if you can get them into a really good routine, or if you can influence someone to live a healthy lifestyle, whether it be going to the gym or just making better decisions nutrition-wise, then it makes such an impact. Yeah. Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how big.
Yeah. So I really started to enjoy that. And then, like I said, I've been a PT for 12 months. About 12 months ago, I was a little bit burnt because I was still working full-time in disability, but I was sort of like senior management. I couldn't go any higher than where I was. Bit burnt out, not really loving the job anymore, and I lost my purpose, I lost my why. And that sort of led me to, I just got my certificate in fitness. So an opportunity came up at a gym, a commercial gym. They didn't have a PT at the time, and I was like, well, everything's going to get filtered to me then. So I quit my full-time job to go to a job that made me no money. So I stayed on casually at the disability company, and then I had 2 jobs in child protection. So I had 3 casual jobs and a PT, and doing my PT stuff at the same time. Like I've got to make it work. Like I've just left a comfortable income, a company car. Like my boss was my best mate. Like I had it made, but it got to a point where this wasn't me forever. Like I was good at my job. I could fucking stay there forever if I wanted to, but yeah, I needed that purpose again. I needed a why. So I was like, I've heard a lot of podcasts with people that have what I would call a champion mindset, where they're like, they've left their good paying job and they're like, I'll fucking stack shelves at Coles if I have to, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, I'm willing to do that. But for now, I've got 3 good paying casual jobs. If I pick up the work, I can make this work. So that's what I did.
You got to do, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I had an 8-month-old at the time, just coming on to a financial crisis. Like the mortgage rates were fucking ridiculous. So I'd be lying if I said I wasn't shit myself. Like it was no easy decision to make, but my partner 100% supported me, and I was like, I'm not an employable person. Like I had, working in the NDIS for so long, I had a certain set of skills that this doesn't work out, I can get a job anywhere. So
what have you got to say to people going through addiction? Just a bit of advice.
Look, I want to say you're not alone. I want to say there are people who do want to help you. I want to say reach out. Like there are people in your corner, and people have probably tried to help you already. So I also need to stress that you got to want to change. But for the most part, what people need to hear is go home, you fucking junkie. Go home. Because 100%, bro, 100%. Because nobody wants to be seen as that. And even when you're taking those kinds of drugs, if someone mentions that word, you're like, I'm not that fucking person. How fucking dare you call me that? But that's what people need to hear, because you know, getting into that lifestyle, that's why no one pulls it out at a family barbecue. because it is disordered. You know you're doing the wrong thing the first time you touch it. And like I said to you before, when my mate started doing it, I'm like, no fucking chance in hell I'm ever touching that. You look like junkies. And then, yeah, I went down that path. And the thing is, you cannot blame anyone but yourself.
Yes.
So your childhood may have a significant impact in how, in which way you gravitate. Don't get me wrong, especially if you grow up in a place where it is normalised. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's age appropriate. Most people do make that decision for themselves. I think there's a certain level of influence that comes into it when you're quite young and you have older. A lot of the kids that I work with have older cousins or siblings or whatever it might be that try and influence that behaviour. But when you're 18 or 19, 20, like, you're still making that decision. So I think even as a 14-year-old kid, I knew I shouldn't have been going into a bottle and buying alcohol. I knew it was the wrong thing to do, but it was the cool thing to do. So I guess it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Like,
it's a big factor that plays a huge role in
big
growing
time.
up.
Yeah.
Is the cool card.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I invested my whole sense of self-worth in from about 14 to, for a good part of 10 years, bro. Good part of 10 years. Because it eventually becomes a part of who you are. Yeah.
No, that's beautiful, Mark. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing your story.